Welcome to Plan9Crunch. I'm Doug Gibson. This is Joe Gibson. And today we're doing what we call scene bites. We're showing you one or two scenes that are really effective in a film. The film today is Invisible Ghost, starring Bela Lugosi. And it was his first film he made for the Poverty Row studio Monogram. The film was made in 1941. And Lugosi had just had success with Universal's Son of Frankenstein, whereas Igor, he created an iconic character. And so Lugosi had more money options. During the horror ban in the late 30s, he went bankrupt, more or less, lost his house. So Lugosi was not the number one guy Universal would go to for movies. It was not, this time it was Lon Chaney Jr. So even though he had a contract with Universal, he would play Igor and even the monster, but he wasn't the main guy in the film. So he had an option of going to other studios. So Joe, what did Monogram give Bela Lugosi that he couldn't get from bigger studios?
Top billing.
Top billing, yes. I mean, and I've seen these Monogram ad books, and they always say one thing: stress Bela Lugosi. He is the hero star. What's interesting about Bela Lugosi is the major studios even sometimes didn't put him as a top person. Like, an example is the one with Lionel Barrymore, Mark of the Vampire, where he's like the third or fourth build. But when you see a marquee, who do they put? Whose name do they put? Bela Lugosi. Okay. So anyways, Invisible Ghost, I have to get and tell you what this movie's about. He plays Dr. Charles Kessler. He's a wealthy man. And his daughter is named Virginia Kessler. And she's played by Polly Ann Young. Now, Polly Ann Young was the third most successful, or perhaps the least successful, of the Young sisters. Loretta Young was a major star. And then Sally Blaine, who used a different last name, was a middling star. Polly Ann Young, I think, is really good in this film, but she basically played only in B movies and also in a lot of cheap westerns in that time period. So she's engaged to a guy named Ralph Dixon. He's played by John McGuire. And the house is wealthy. Everything looks happy, except that sometimes, Joe, sometimes Dr. Kessler goes a little mad. Okay? And I'm not showing you this scene, but he has a wife, Mrs. Kessler, who's not living in the house, and she ran away from him. And he has these moments where he thinks she's in the house. And one of the early scenes, he's talking to her and she's not there. And everybody's just used to this. Now, Mrs. Kessler is played by an actress who was famous in the silent era. Her name was Betty Compson. And the little trick of this movie is she's actually outside the house being cared for by some of the servants. These are this wonderful, convoluted Monogram plots, all right? Yeah, they're just great. Let's go to the first scene and watch it, okay? There's Betty Compson. He wanders away all the time. Is he sensing something?
Perhaps.
I'm afraid to come home. You'd kill me.
That's another shot Steve Stone's gonna do a good painting.
You'd kill anybody.
So, did you notice they're filming over through the fireplace?
Was that a fireplace?
Yes, it is a fireplace, all right. It may not look as good as it did when they were in the theaters in 1941, but it is a fireplace. This film was directed by his name was Joseph H. Lewis, and he was a young director then, but he became pretty famous in Hollywood. Not major famous, but he moved well beyond the Poverty Row era. And he also made a film called Gun Crazy, which we reviewed in our blog. It's a classic movie of that era. So I remember reading one place where Monogram, the writer alleged that Monogram would sometimes, when they get a big star to a multi-film contract, they give him the nicest shot, nicest produced film the first time. And what you can say about Invisible Ghost is it is really well produced. I mean, it's well directed. You see shots like we saw here. You'll see shots down. You see Lugosi's character looking downward, and Betty Thompson looking up at him. You see real talent in directing this film, and you see more care, I think, put into the production values. I love all the Monogram's films, but this film, the first one, looks like a gold mine compared to maybe the penultimate film like Return of the Ape Man, which is a great film but has low production values that this film didn't have. Joe, how often have you seen this film?
Probably just a couple times.
Couple times?
I mean, you watch it more often than I do.
Well, I'm obsessive in that way. Okay, so what happens to her boyfriend eventually in this movie? He gets accused of something, doesn't he? This is a convoluted plot. I'm going to explain a little bit of it. We don't see much of the boyfriend, but he discovers the maid in this house used to be his paramour, okay? And they used to share an apartment together. And that would bring, a lot of ruin back then. This guy's trying to marry into a rich family. And so that leads to a weird set of events where an actor, one of the butler, he's played by Clarence Muse, an African American actor, overhears them arguing, the maid and her boyfriend, okay? And so the boyfriend's like sort of semi-threatening the girl and everything. And so what I'm trying to lead up to is, we just saw Lugosi's character, Dr. Kessler, becoming unhinged on seeing his wife. And his daughter, Virginia Kessler's boyfriend, has done nothing. But the maid is in her room, ready for bed. And I think we're going to see right now, one of the scariest scenes that is in a Monogram film. Can we look at that, Jack? Is it a trance?
It appears trans-like.
The first time I saw it, I thought this was silly. But at repeat viewings, it had more menace to me, is what it's doing. Here it is, right here. The scene I want to focus on.
Why, Mr. Kessler.
Thank you, Jack. This is a really effective scene because it shows the direction skills of Joseph H. Lewis. Goes in there, he's focused on one thing. And what does he use to kill her with?
His is it a robe or an overcoat?
Overcoat, probably.
Overcoat.
Or a robe, you could be right. And she witnesses him everything until he gets there. And then he's done something that causes her to scream. And what happens? You see him concluding the killing, right? I mean, he's got that maniacal look in his eyes. He's also got a pain look in his eyes. It's like he's insane. He's not really he's a killer, but he's insane. He's not sane.
Do we think that, like, he's putting the robe or overcoat like over her face, and that's why it cuts to black, and then strangles her or something? Or
I think he used the robe to kill her, and then he brought it up.
like, I mean, it cuts to black. Are we in her perspective at that point when it cuts
That's
to
a
black?
good point. I haven't thought of that. But one more thing I want to mention about this scene is, well, besides the use of him coming at her and the camera frame and everything, you've got happy music playing.
It's a good juxtaposition. Yeah.
That's really adds to the terror, in my opinion. Don't you think? This actress who he kills was another Monogram starlet who probably played in very low budget films. Her name was Terry Walker, and so we're gonna wrap this up now. I don't want to give away the ending, but what happens is, you don't even see Polly Young, my apologies, but her boyfriend actually is, because of what I told you earlier, and what Clarence Muse's character, the butler, overheard, becomes a suspect in that murder that Dr. Kessler did. And I'm going to give away one little thing, but it's before the film's only halfway over. He actually gets executed. One of the beautiful things, Joe, about a movie like this is you can have a crime, a trial, an appeal, and an execution in 8 minutes. All right. And then there's a delightful twist as the movie gets into its second half that I want to give away. Invisible Ghost, once again, also has a beautiful Blu-ray. And it's on YouTube, Internet Archive, Amazon Prime, and other places. Some of these films are also colorized, although I don't really think that's great, but it's fun to watch sometimes that way. So, Joe, did you think Bela Lugosi was able to convey a kindly man who could be above suspicion even as he's killing these people?
We didn't see much of that in the clips, but he does have that kind of range, I think.
Yeah. One time a friend of mine said about this movie, all these people are dying and no one seems to be too upset. That may be the Monogram formula, but I think Lugosi is a generally nice man in this movie who's been driven insane by his wife. And I think it's effectively conveyed that he has no idea he's doing these killings. And it has a very poignant ending. This is a film that many people think is the best Lugosi Monogram. It's certainly the best produced. I tend to like The Corpse Vanishes a little bit more, but I love all the Monograms, even Ghost on the Loose, which is a pretty weak Bowery East Side Kids movie. So anyways, thank you for watching this Scene Bite. We're Plan9Crunch, and we're Doug Gibson, Joe Gibson, and Plan9Crunch at YouTube and TikTok, and Plan9Crunch podcast and blog at Facebook, and Plan9Crunch.com for the old-fashioned blog where you can read a review I wrote of this movie near the top of the blog. Anyways, thanks very much, and that's a wrap.